Hey everybody, Asher here, back with some more Kerbal Space Program, where you have to pardon the herky-jerkiness. This is at time-accelerated launch here, as we are launching off to Eve. Not all in one go. I mean, this ship could probably make it to Eve on its own. But we have another ship to build yet together. It is going to be called the Eve Dervish, for reasons that may or may not become apparent a little bit later on. But for now, we are just starting off with a design that is very, very similar to what we sent to Duna the first time around. This is the brain, this is the core, this is the puller unit. We're going to be pulling a lot of stuff from behind, and so far, the launch here at least is going to be fairly routine, but I still want to show some of the launches because I have to go ahead and apologize for how some of this video went. I did record a lot of footage, or I thought I did, and then when I backed out of Kerbal Space Program, I saw that I kind of had the negative image. When I was recording, I was not recording, and when I thought I was not recording, I was recording. So we're going to have some stuff that is a little bit weird and unexpected, but hey, you know what, that's okay. I don't mean that as like, oh, look at the freak show for this launch here, because right here, the Eve brain's going pretty well. It's just that there's some footage that is going to be missing, but I guess that's okay because we're going to jump onto it. This is going to be a bit of a construction episode to start with, and hopefully we'll see some new and interesting things. The only major design differences from this unit versus what I sent to Duna, there's two. One is there are the large Gigantor solar panel arrays, which some people in the comments last video were very kind to point out to me that I was staring right at them and I missed them. So yay, solar arrays. We can maybe get even more solar power, even though because we're closer to Kerbal, the sun on Eve, the solar panels are so much more effective that I don't really need it, and that is a ugly, ugly orbit. But hey, that's okay. Now you'll see that I'm already trying to sit and align with things. That's because this is not exactly in order. Some of the footage that I dropped was for my next stage of this ship that we'll be putting there together. So it's part of it's already up here, the hopper unit for Gilly. I'm going to just do a quick recreation of the launch though, because I thought the launch for that Gilly hopper unit was funny in its own weird and spectacular way. So there's going to be a little bit of post-commentary here in the start, and then we will go to live commentary. By the way, the only other design difference you may have noticed, the service bay is on top of this now. That's because I don't have a gargantuan space center or space station that is going to be tacked onto the bottom, so I can't open the service bay doors and do science from here because it'll be blocked by the engines. We don't want that, or it'll be blocked by the fuel tanks. And as you all know, service bay doors can rip a ship apart if you let it. But that's the Eve brain. We'll get to there. Let's go ahead and look next at the Gilly hopper. Now, like I said before, this is a recreation of the launch that I did before, but it went substantially the same. Once again, we're doing time acceleration. I hope this is showing up okay. I haven't done the video acceleration before with Adobe Premiere, but at least watching in the preview mode while doing the recording here, it's looking a little jerky, and I don't know if I'm quite the fan of it. Maybe it'll turn out okay once it renders. But here we go. You see the gigantically stupid just fairing that's up front, which by the way, they are patching fairing so that they'll split off to the side. But of course the fairing here will just explode in super crazy happiness in just a minute once we get to about 20,000 meters. But once again, this is a time accelerated launch. That fairing is big enough to hold a giant unit part of a space station. In fact, this is one of the biggest kind of dumbest things that I've put on a any interplanetary part. You can see there's some poodle engines. You can see there are some heat shields. The idea is that this is going to be weighted down to one side, and this will be the part that takes the brunt of the Eve atmospheric reentry. Now the problem with that is that that means that I'm going to be having to tug 4 fuel tanks worth of weight and 4 heat shields, a bunch of stuff I'm not going to be really using on the transfer because we don't need all this. In fact, we don't need a lot of fuel after this to make our docking maneuver. But like I said, we're going to be going into orbit, and we get to do, I mean, there's no better way to talk about it other than we got to put this in real time, and hopefully it shows okay in real time. But yeah, this is where things get a little stupider, because I thought in my infinite wisdom, well, let's just design it like this. We'll do the launch system the normal way. You saw that I finally developed a launch system that'll get things into orbit. It's about as efficient as the 9 stack, but it costs a little less. But you see here that this is not enough to get it quite in orbit by itself because this is just so big. However, what I can do and what I decide to do here is a mid-orbit flip. I'm actually rotating the ship. I'm going to manually decouple things. I got to get the right decouple though. So bye-bye. And here is the foot, the stomper, the hopper part of this ship. It's ugly, but it is in its own way just absolutely fantastic in my mind. So notice that we're in a suborbital flight. I'm using my RCS in space at 100,000 meters just to try and get here. And then, well, this is where the fun starts. We have 4 Poodle engines. And did somebody ask for ship spin today? Because you are about to get some spinning. That's right. These 4 Poodle engines are firing, and just look at the shadows for our happy crew here. Just look at the ship. It's just going to be going around and around and around, and that's what happens when I accelerate. There's your motion sickness for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. There is Kerbin in all of its glory just flying past. Just imagine having to fly this. It's a little ridiculous, but it does have the fuel to get into orbit, but I'm not even going to pretend to try to control it or stop the spinning here, because first of all, that's just, I'm sorry. That is just so funny. That just... I did it. I did the launch once. I thought, okay, maybe that's weird. I don't know why it's doing that. Recreated it. Yeah, here we go again. So if I have to use those Poodle engines for any kind of transfer around Eve, I'm going to have to deal with ship spin even more. So just taking a few shots because, I don't know. I'll tell you why it's spinning like this, I'm pretty sure. It's because I'm feeding the fuel lines out from the middle of the ship to the 4 external engines. There's your second motion sickness, bonus motion sickness. Yeah, that fuel tank in the middle doesn't have an engine, but I think because of the way the fuel lines are feeding out, it is creating some centrifugal force that is just making my ship spin around. So here we go. More craziness, and then some stuff that didn't happen in the initial launch is going to happen here, and I'm not sure quite why it did, but I thought, oh, this is nice. We're still spinning. We're still going okay. And there's a shake, and that solar panel's not supposed to break off, and that service base is not supposed to break off, and, well, I guess there is such a thing as too much ship spin, but technically this is still flyable. It just will not connect to anything because it also lost the docking port. Oops. Like I said, this flight is not canon because it's not what the first launch actually did. I'm not sure. Once again, I'm not sure why this happened this time. Alright, so I did happen to lose some footage, unfortunately, between here and there, but here is the landing station, the landing base for Eve, connecting to the ghillie hopper here. Once again, I'm time accelerating because this docking maneuver, a few of these docking maneuvers took quite some time here. Like I said, there's just some footage that I lost. There's a little bit of B-roll, but not really enough to create like a little trailer for this. Not to mention, I kind of want to go in a different direction with what I may or may not be doing for this mission. But yeah, like I said, everything docked in orbit. It went fairly well. I mean, all things considered. It's a spaceship. It's a very large spaceship when I don't have the gigantic docking ports unlocked in the tech tree yet. So this is an ugly dock. This is an ugly dock. Keep in mind that it's 3 times time acceleration, so I had to kick the backside quite a bit. The reason that I did it like this was because there's still some fuel in that big fuel tank up there, and I wanted to be able to get my first transfer in. I ran a few more transfer missions just to fill up the tanks before we got started in earnest. But now we're going to cut from me doing post commentary to me doing live commentary, because we're going to jump straight to what this ship looks like as a full complete build as we try and leave Kerbin's orbit and barely make it out in time to get to Eve. That's the plan anyway, so time for actual me. That's what we'll call it. Hey everybody, Asher here, back with live commentary now after doing some construction. That obviously took a little bit of cutting and editing here, and I didn't even get everything on there. So here is what has been dubbed the Eve Dervish. We're actually almost at our maneuver node. We're almost at our exit point. I am leaving practically a day or two after getting stuff together. So this is going to be fun and interesting. We have a maneuver node right here. And we'll talk about these maneuvers because Lord knows we're going to have plenty of time to talk about this. We have 1,300 meters per second of delta V. You'll notice we are doing quite the flight up here, and we're going to be meeting Eve not at my favorite spot. I prefer to meet Eve over here, but it cost about 1,000 extra delta V to try and make an encounter over here, which seems a little odd because Eve is starting over here, but it does move faster. Regardless, we have an encounter with Eve, so we're going to take it. So here's the Dervish. we're going to be burning here in just a second. Very similar design as before, with the downsides that I do not have the large docking ports, nor the 4-stack cluster, because that is a top-tier science piece. So that's too bad. But what we are going to be doing today is we get here into the sunlight. We have the different units. You already saw me construct most of them. We have the ghillie hopper. We have the landing station for Eve. We have the transfer system, which was called the Eve Brain. The one thing that you may not recognize, is I will need to start my burn here momentarily, is this up here. You may have noticed on the Eve hopper, some of you watching at home, that there's one thing conspicuously missing, and it's not the giant kick thrusters over here. That this heat shield is at least supposed to shield everything back here. I'm not sure if that's how the heat modeling is going to work exactly. We are going to do a little bit of transformers assemble, moving this in the back here, and then tacking this top unit on the back the other way. It's not just a fancy hood ornament. Remember, I do have a contract to scan the put a satellite in orbit of Eve, in a polar orbit. So since I'm doing that, I'm going to scan for surface resources. Ha ha, ha ha. Not doing a land and return mission, but it's for future reference. Now, the other thing is that I needed a fuel can, or an ore canister of some kind. It's going to be really hard to actually mine and do anything with the ore if I don't put a frickin' ore canister on here. So that is a major, major derp on my end. But as we can see, Kerbal Space Center, we can see it right down there. You can actually see a little bit of flicker from the rendering of it, even 100,000 miles up above, which is pretty neat. But there's the sun. Now we're going to start our burn here. Let's see how long of a burn we need. We need a pretty sizable burn, I'm pretty sure. So this is probably going to take 2 orbits, to be honest. And that's totally fine. Now you'll notice that I'm burning up. The reason that I'm burning up, and don't mind these asteroids that are captured, they're not really captured. But the reason I'm burning up here is because, well, let's talk about orbital mechanics for a second. First off, for those, if I hadn't made it clear before, Eve is not on an even plane with the other planets. It is a little bit of a slope, and we're not launching conveniently on any of the ascending or descending nodes. And I was hoping maybe I could take advantage of this orbital inclination to get myself here, but like I said, it takes a lot more delta V. So regardless, we do have the encounter here. We're going to be going in quite a bit faster, and it's going to take more fuel than I'd like. But we missed our first neat, fancy launch window. So that's how that works. And maybe if I waited a few more days instead of launching at day 8, we would be over here. But I don't know for sure. It just feels right to launch now with our B team. Allie, Necklace, Alberta, or Abella, Paddock Kerman, and Dudford Kerman. Paddock, you just got home and now you get to leave. Now here is the thing. We're launching upwards because Kerbin is currently orbiting the sun, or Kerbal, at around 9,000 meters per second. Kind of analogous to Earth orbiting around the sun. Now, when we leave that orbit, we're going to be, remember, our velocity here, 2,300 meters per second, is relative to our orbit around Kerbin. We are going to gain all of that speed, which is why if you've ever tried any of those interstellar mods or faster than light mods that pop you from here to there, if you start an orbit of Kerbin and you like go immediately to ELO or something, you have to immediately account for the fact that you have 9,000 extra delta V. So it's a fun puzzle to make. But what that means is that we need to do a kind of a aggressive additional burn to bring our orbit up and out here, because this inclination is going to be what we need to sling ourselves not just into the solar system, but up. Now the catch, and it's a pretty sizable one, is that we're going to need to correct this every time we try and make an orbit around. Plus this system, as we saw last time, has a tendency to attempt to overheat. So at least our ship isn't big enough to where we're not burning in real time, or where we don't have to decelerate here. We do have a, let's see here, a mass of about 200 tons. And we are going to be doing some playing with fuel canisters here. We're going to be transferring fuel from down here to up here, because once we make it to Eve, we don't need any of these bottom tanks. In fact, I am expecting, or hoping, to be able to get back to Kerbin on just the fuel that's in here. But the important thing is that the ghillie hopper can dock with things. So if I need to add fuel to that and add fuel everywhere, and do little sips from Gilly. That's gonna be awful. I have a feeling that might not be very fuel efficient at all, but that's our backup plan if we don't have enough fuel to make it home. Or worst case scenario, once again, is that we have to send a rescue mission to Eve. Now the other issue, and you may have realized this if we look at our crew manifest here again, is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 engineer, 1 scientist, 3 pilots. I'd love to have another scientist. I didn't decide to take the time to get somebody off the moon, so there we go. And as much as I want to readjust on the maneuver node here, the fact is that this ship wobbles like crazy because I have the tiny docking ports. So that may be an issue when we hit re-entry heat. I know it was with Duna in some of my test runs, but this is supposed to be the front. This is the Gilly Hopper. This is supposed to be the foot of our vessel. And we're going to put as much as our weight down here so that these shields can take the brunt as best as it can. And this probe's going to be in the back and hopefully not caught all in the flames. That's the hope anyway. Because it doesn't have any shielding of its own, and if it loses the ability to generate power, I'm going to be sad. So see all this talking I've done and we've only lost a few hundred Delta V. These burns take a while. This is why I started so early and am trying just to go in orbit. So we're not even at our periapsis yet. I may have even started this burn a little too early. How are we doing on fuel? We're doing okay on fuel. Our fuel budget is actually pretty tight on this, I'm pretty sure. And the other unfortunate thing is that all of the heat's dissipating into the solar panels. I hope those don't explode or anything. But we'll have to, if they do, well, we have contingency plans. We'll have to figure it out. That means I can't put this into orbit until the very end of the mission. And that's how it is. But yeah, right now, I know this is a ton of extra weight to drag down here. That is one thing that I thought about for the design too. But I really want to see, is 5 heat shields going to be enough for taking a whole unit like this, launching it into Eve in its terrible, terrible atmosphere, and keeping it from burning. Now, I'm playing with the 1.0.2 atmosphere. You'll have to pardon my cough. I'm playing with the release atmosphere now. So chances are re-entry heat may not be as deadly as it otherwise could be. On the other hand, it's still Eve, and Eve has 5 times the atmosphere of Kerbin, and Eve's atmosphere goes all the way up to like 90,000, 80,000, 90,000 meters. A key point being is that it's really easy to dip in and just crash. So we're not even... We are actually slowing down a little bit our time now. So we got plenty of time here together. You know what, in fact, let us actually go ahead and just let the recording run, and we will accelerate to our next kind of burn, because this is where we're at in the game right now. Burns take a long time. Just wait until our ELO mission, where, holy cow, you thought these engines take a while. Try waiting for an ion engine to do something. We'll get to ELO later. I guess I will say before I jump the cut that, okay, we're starting to get a little bit of overheating here, so we'll need to cut this down soon. These nukes do overheat. It is a little bit of a problem. But what does end up happening is that I bring up all the crew that we have because we have 1 pilot left at Kerbal Space Center. So if for some reason this mission goes to hell and our Duna return mission goes to hell, we'll still have the people that are on the moon and here to carry on the space program. So all is not lost. In fact, I'll probably have a few videos just in the interim called Solo Space Program. Now, I could launch him to Jool because I do have a mission to take somebody to Jool, but I have a space station that I want to put in Julian orbit. I'm just not sure if I can get the station to survive air capture, so maybe it's something I could do with crew or without, but I'll need to launch that because I have the money. I have plenty of money. This whole launch plus refueling, because I was able to pick up 1 or 2 kind of BSE contracts, like get science off of the surface of Duna, didn't end up costing that much. It's nice when you already have the designs and everything. We're doing pretty good on our burns here. We just want to not overheat, so I'm going to cut here. In just a second, we will readjust the maneuver node and we will do this again. So, let's watch this just a little bit faster or wait for the cut to the next moment. Alright, so you'll notice the nav ball's doing more weird things here. I'm just going to have to make this my final burn, which is unfortunate because somehow readjusting the maneuver node one more time. I think what happened was that I didn't burn off of my prograde vector at the right inclination angle. You see this line here that shows where Kerbin is orbiting. My goal, if we can follow that line as close as possible, you can kind of see it from the horizon here. I want to do kind of an even burn right around here, and because I did so many early burns and didn't burn on the other side, I kind of shifted it over, so I upped the delta V a little bit. Also, I've had some really serious issues with I did have to restart the client once because suddenly I wasn't able to target Eve, and then as I was doing RCS adjustments here, my maneuver went from about 300 meters per second to 500 meters per second. So we'll see how that goes, but we're going to be able to make it to Eve regardless. I did go ahead and shift the fuel here somewhere. And since this is the final burn, the final countdown, let's go ahead and extend the solar panels. These guys are going to be out in space for a while. But I mean, there's not too much more excitement that we haven't already seen otherwise, other than I just want to make sure that we get the encounter that we're hoping for. So what that means is that we're going to go ahead, I'll skip to the end just to show you all kind of what encounter we have in store, and then there's going to be some things we get to do in the interim while the ship is flying to Eve. There's some various missions I want to run, some things I haven't actually tried before, as once again I am just off this maneuver node entirely. Let's see if I can do a mid-course adjustment with a little bit of RCS pushing. This is where the polar unit is so important for these. It's going to be, I think this is going to be fun slamming this into Eve's atmosphere. Dune is one thing. You may have seen in that little promo video I did for the Duna Behemoth what happens when you hit the atmosphere incorrectly for something that thin. Now multiply that by 5, and I bet even when you go incorrectly it can still be an issue. So yeah, it looks like hopefully we can get the burn we need, because it looks like me hitting the RCS thrusters appropriately is actually bringing everything back down. So we have solar panels, we have a happy little ship with a crazy hood ornament on top. That's not what I expected, but that is what we have. So it's a little bit more of a burn. Obviously, a second equals more than a second because I have so many parts. Hardware deceleration is fun, but the key is, will I have enough liquid fuel? I've already emptied, excuse me, the 5 liquid fuel, or the 4 liquid fuel tanks. There's one other right here, and I don't have any fuel management mods. Oh, look, we're shifting, which means we are now on an escape trajectory out of Kerbin. Exciting. So is this time for a photo op? Maybe. So again, that is the worst hood ornament ever, but we'll take another screen cap anyway. Probably can do a little better like this. There we go. And we can decelerate just a smidge, because after all, I don't want these engines to catch on fire. But I'm glad that I'm not super wobbly all the time with that here. But we may have to have the ghillie hopper also be a ghillie refueler. That's going to be a little not irritating. That's going to be a little funny if that's the case. Because at least you should be able to leave ghillie with a... Oh man, this is going to be... We'll see if we get the encounter that we were promised by doing this. We still got about 200 delta V to go. We can't stop burning now because there's no more orbits to make. I try not to do these much beyond 3 passes. So we still got 1 burn. We're really off our maneuver node marker. The last encounter I got with Eve was within 44 million meters, but it looks like it's a little bit closer to 2 o'clock. Or, yeah, a little closer to 2 o'clock on the clock hand than before. I don't know if that's good or bad. But this is what happens as we're waiting just days to go by. So I think I'm going to keep my marker here because I don't trust this very well. And we can make some mid-course adjustments just to make sure that we make it there. But if we look at the alarm clock, it is going to take us how many days to fly to Eve? It's going to take our periapsis is 112 days. That means we get a launch to Joule, and we almost have a launch to Elo, or Elu as some people like to call it. I'm not sure what the correct one is, but yeah, we have a few missions we get to do in between. Also, if we look in the map mode a little closer to here, we have an asteroid that I promise you is not in orbit. If it is in circular orbit, that's hilarious, but I'm pretty sure it's not. And then we have another asteroid going through here. I let those missions slide while I was doing the refuel thing on the moon. But we have one brave pilot who's going to be doing some solo space program action. And he will be able to tell us kind of what we need. And I'm not sure. Our maneuver node just keeps moving down and down. Maybe I should chase it just a little bit. I mean, the important thing is we'll probably get an encounter with Eve. I'll be very sad if we don't. It just may not be as pretty as we hope for, so I should really look at the map mode now. Because we are close to matching. Maybe. Maybe encounter time soon. So we got, like I said, I somehow added 100 extra delta V, but as long as we can get some kind of encounter, it doesn't have to be a 44 million one, which is actually really close compared to Eve's sphere of influence. There we go. 70, 72, oh. 73, that's more of what I expected. But look there, instead of spending all the extra delta V to get some pretty encounter down here, we have an Eve encounter. Hooray! That's very exciting. So all we get to do now is say good night and good luck to our remaining Kerbal knots. We can go ahead and unleash the remaining solar panels that will be far more effective out in the well, not the service bay. They'll be far more effective out in the confines of space. I'll talk a little bit about the mid-course corrections to make. But yeah, that's it for now. This is Asher with Kerbal Space Program. We're flying to Eve, and we're going to do some stuff in the interim while the ship is on the way to get there, because Kerbal Alarm Clock is nice. And let's do this. Look how long we have from our Duna to Kerbin window. 1 year and 80 days. So we've got some things to do while we wait for the rest of the crew to get back. In fact, Kerbin to Duna, Jebediah is going to be on Ike for a long time. That's neither here nor there. This is Asher. We're flying to Eve. It's not pretty, but we're on our way. Thanks for watching. I will see you all next time.